Hi Dwayne, this is Amy Cho. Congratulations on winning the online lesson giveaway and thanks for joining mpswing.com. I hope you're enjoying the website. Thank you for filling out the questionnaire. I learned that you've been playing less than a year, about 10 months. You're scoring closer to like low 90s, which is excellent. And on bad days, you sometimes go up to 110. So your goal today is to get your mid-irons more consistent. You sometimes have like fades or slices, and also with the drivers, sometimes you're pulling it straight left or hooking it. There are a couple things I would like us to work on, so let's get started. And also, you mentioned that you have low back issues. Sometimes you get like sore in your low back or tightness. I have the same issue too, so I always make sure to never strain your body to make the golf swing happen, so you're at the right place. I understand that you've read like the Ben Hogan book, and I'm kind of amazed at how to the T you've been working on your setup and your backswing according to what Hogan says. So, which is amazing, but I would like to mention 3 things in your setup and then a couple things in your swing. In the setup, if you take a look from down the line, you do have your weight in the heels. That's what Hogan says to do, but it's been quite a few years since his philosophy has been out, and there's been huge improvements on technology when it comes to like golf clubs and golf balls. Before, the golfers had to really accommodate the very weak metal shafts they had. They really had no choice but to kind of like, you know, have a flowing, less compression, but like softer swing. But nowadays, the shaft technology, club face technology is so advanced. Now a lot of golfers are turning more centered, coiling, and then trapping the ball, compressing the ball, like very different than what the swing and the shots used to be back in the day. Nowadays, we try to keep our weight more in the middle of the feet or in the balls of the feet, trying to get into more athletic positions so we can really create a lot of speed and power. So if you have your weight in your heels, this is how I first learned to swing as well. It's very easy to lose the balance during the swing. So what happens is your upper body tenses up, or your upper body stands up to counterbalance for that balance loss. And when you take a look at your knees from face on, you have your knees slightly tucked in. But now we try to keep the knees going the same direction as your toes, because if the knees get tucked in, we found that there's a lot of restriction in hip rotation, and we don't want that. When you go ahead and set up, let's go ahead and straighten your knees. And as you're bending your knees, make sure the knees are going same direction as your toes, so they feel a little bit flared out if anything. And also as you're bending, now try and put the pressure in the balls of your feet, big round part right below your big toes. So it kind of looks like this instead of this way. You're putting pressure into the balls of your feet. And then the last but not the least, when you're setting up, your posture looks pretty good, a little bit arched. I would try not to arch the back so much, especially if you have a bad back, because it can put a lot of tension in the low back. If you start this way, it should be more neutral. Instead of here, it should be more flat. And also, your head is in line with your spine. And if it's this way, now it puts a lot of pressure in the front of your shoulders, your neck, and also the low back. So I usually suggest the golfers to drop the head, so it helps to relax the back and the neck and the shoulders. So it almost have to feel like the back of head is parallel to the ground. Ernie Els is really good at doing that, and he's super relaxed in the upper body, and I love that about his swing. I know that's quite a years back as well, but he's a great example for that. So instead of having your head same line with your spine, drop it ever so slightly so your shoulders and neck and your low back feels a little bit more relaxed. So those were the 3 things in the setup. Now in the swing, I see a lot of Hogan traits again, because he used to early hinge, and also at the top of the backswing, he had the idea of hinging a lot, setting the club a lot, so the shaft is very close to your shoulders. And that's exactly what you're doing, which is pretty amazing. I love it. But we do need to change your sequence and synchronization just a tad, because when you are early hinging, you're supposed to be moving like in sync with the rest of the body. For example, your hips are turning 45 degrees during the backswing. Your shoulders are turning about 90 degrees in the backswing. Your hands are traveling from this position to like ear high. And all these 3 things are syncing up beautifully, so that way you're making a great coil. And now you can use that uncoil to fire through in the downswing. But right now it seems like you're hinging your wrist all at once, And then you're turning your body and lifting your hands into this position. So now your hands are doing too much work and the body isn't coiling correctly. So I want to sync that up, and then on the way down from here, we can tell that your hands are initiating the downswing. That's causing you to go slightly out to in, so the swing plane is going that way. So when you said you're cutting a little bit with your mid irons, I could totally tell from this swing plane, you leave the club face slightly open. It'll always have that slight spin on the golf ball. With your drivers, if you are coming down out to in and you're releasing correctly, then now the ball's gonna start straight left or even curve a little bit more to create that hook you were mentioning. That little hand starting the downswing going out to in, we have to work on. So you go, your hands start and then the body follows through. So you can tell that the lead arm is bent a lot in the follow through this way and down the line as well. You can see that. So we really need to get your hips moving first and then arms extending beautifully so you're rehinging better than this way, right? I know it sounds like a lot. It sounds very difficult, but going to be Aimifying it for you, meaning making golf simple, fun, and effective. So I'm going to get your hip turn, your shoulders, and your hands in sync, synchronized for the backswing, and then get you to start your hips to lead the downswing so the hands can drop down into the right slot, so that way your swing plane becomes more on plane and get rid of the ball starting left, hooking, or cutting to the right. Sounds like a plan, right? Okay, this is a 4-step drill. The first step is to stick alignment stick in your belt loop, and then you're gonna hold one in your shoulders this way. So these are parallel. In the backswing, now we're going to turn, and we can tell a 45-degree angle with this stick and then 90 degrees with this stick, right? And we're not going to go this way how you were doing. So hands go and then hips all at once. We're going to start the takeaway with both sticks moving together like this. You see, so it kind of looks like your hips are allowing your shoulders to turn, right? Your hips are allowing your shoulders to turn. I have a terrible back. I have several back injuries. So if I turn my upper body without turning my hips, it puts a lot of strain in my back. So I try to turn my hips and my shoulders together to relieve pressure in the back. Instead, I coil a lot in my thighs and my legs will just uncoil everything I have, which works great as an enormous amount of power that I've really never had before. I'm hoping to take you down the same route without hurting your back. Your stick on your hip, this left part, starts first, which takes over to the shoulder, stick on the left to turn. So it goes hip start, shoulder start. It almost starts simultaneously, right? And then get him to go 45, 90 degrees. You're going, and then we're gonna do the downswing as well because we have to link it all up to make it as simple as possible. And we're going to start with the bottom stick and then swing the top stick this way. You see how it goes? Hip, shoulder, right? Goes turn together, hip, shoulder. I know it's almost simultaneous for the downswing as well, but there's a slight gap between hips and shoulders, very little. If you make the gap too much, it's going to strain your back. So let's try and feel like you're turning your hips and shoulders together. So it goes hip, shoulder, hip, shoulder. So once you understand your hips and shoulders rotation, now let's go ahead and move on to the second step. We have to synchronize your hand movement to your body movement. So I have a triangle here. You might have seen this lesson on my YouTube. This is the same as the stick before, but there's a triangle here. The tip of this triangle indicates where your hands stay. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're going to turn the hips and shoulders, and hands always stay in front of your buttons, your chest. See, I drew the buttons here. So your hips and chest, see, you never take your hands first and then turn your body. So you go, your hips and chest turn together, your hips, chest, and hands turn together, and then hips, shoulders. Same thing, right? So it goes, so it feels like your hands are always staying in front of you, okay? Hips and shoulders turn together, hips, shoulders. Even if you don't have the triangle, you can do it with an imaginary triangle and just go hip, shoulders, hip shoulders, and keep your hands in front of your chest the whole time instead of making it go next to your chest, in front of your chest, okay? Once you have a good grasp on that idea, let's go ahead and hit the golf ball. First time you start hitting golf balls, I want you to slow it down to about 50% speed, so that way you're able to incorporate the new movements into the swing. If you do it too fast, your old swings will always come out at first, so you won't be able to make changes, right? So you have to allow yourself to go slow and really imagine there are sticks on your shoulders and your hips, and make sure these sticks are turning, turn, and hands stay in front. Did you see that? Instead of doing its own thing, the turn and the hands move together. You can still work on your early hinge. You can still try and get the shaft close, but if you move your hips and shoulders together, your hands might become a little bit higher, which I would actually love to see. Your hips, shoulders, and hands go together, and then it goes hip, shoulder, almost together. Let's go slow and hit some. Hip, shoulder, hands together, together. So it'll look like this. Hip, shoulders, hands together instead of, right? So it goes hip, shoulders, hands together, hip, shoulder, hands together, hip, shoulder, hands, hip, shoulder, hands. See the difference in the swing plane? Hands, hands, hip, shoulder, hands, hip, shoulder, hands. Always move bottom up for the backswing and the downswing. Now the fourth step is, once you get really comfortable, you can go ahead and add full speed. So there were 3 things in the setup. Try and put the pressure in the balls of your feet or middle of your feet by making sure the knees are going same direction as your toes instead of inward. And in the setup, instead of having your head same line as your spine, I want you to drop your head just slightly to relax your neck, shoulders, and low back. And then during the swing, instead of hinging all at once and then turning later and then having the hands to lead the downswing, we are turning hips, shoulders, hands almost simultaneously in that order I just mentioned, okay? Hips, shoulders, hands. And then for the downswing, hips, shoulders, hands. Almost together. Hips, shoulders, hands, hips, shoulders, hands. So that way you'll be able to get your hips starting first, which means the hands will start on the right plane. I try to aimify it as much as possible because there are a lot of things going on, but I had to get you back in sync in the right sequence. Before you get started with the practice, let me know if you have any questions on the lesson we just went through today. Keep me updated on your progress. If you're ready, please go ahead and send in your updated swings so that way I can keep an eye on your progress and make sure you're on the right track. Thank you so much for signing up for AIMEEFY and congratulations once again for winning the online golf lesson with me. Thanks, Wayne. Let me know how it goes. Mwah.